And we're back. Well, President Trump is far from the first commander-in-chief to deal with the medical crisis. Obviously, we had somebody like Eisenhower. He had the heart attack, which some people thought he actually shouldn't run. That was actually a year in advance. And I think we had a bowel obstruction the following year. But even all of these illnesses were still, precipitously further out from the election. So talk to us a little bit about your historical perspective on this as we try to figure out what we can glean into President Trump's prospects moving forward.
Yeah, Joe, Eisenhower's heart attack was on September 24th, 1955, and it was the birth date of Ike, a little baby that died at 3 years of age that he and Mamie Eisenhower cherished. They promised every year they'd celebrate his birth, not his death, and not remember his death. And it was on that birthday anniversary that Eisenhower had a heart attack, ironically. But you made a mistake in something you've said. Information that's fed to you about the fact that they don't get sick just before the election. It's not true. There are many examples. One, I lived myself when I worked in the White House for George H.W. Bush. He was sick for a period of time, and the national news media didn't even know about it. The president's health is a closely guarded secret. And finally, the national news media became aware of it just the election year, and he had Graves' disease. So here was the national media basically saying, vote for Bill Clinton because George H.W. Bush is going to die. The irony of all of that is George H.W. Bush became the second longest living president in American history, lived into his 90s. So Graves' disease did not take him, and the national media was pushing to Bill Clinton on a false narrative.
No, absolutely. Talk a little bit about what we in the public and in the media should be looking for as we try to discern the actual status of President Trump and obviously the First Lady and the elected officials who find themselves impacted at this particular moment in time.
Well, you should be looking as close as you can, Joe, but you should also have a very heavy dose of skepticism because the president's real physical condition is a closely guarded secret. And there are many people that don't want you to know that. And there are many arrogant reporters who think they have all the information when they don't. Years later, when books were written about Reagan, both Craig and I have written some of those books and interviewed Reagan, we learned how close he came to death. And the news media at the time missed that story. So we don't know everything. Right. And the White House doesn't want us to know everything. I did interview Reagan in his last public meeting before he was diagnosed or before he publicly announced that he had Alzheimer's disease. I could see something was wrong. We talked about football and the Gipper. And so there's also that question, Joe, at what point is the president's cognitive abilities affected? And we'll have to think about that with Joe Biden as much as with Donald Trump.
Oh, man, wonderful. Well, we're going to probably leave it there. But as you say, they have known knowns and unknown unknowns. But obviously, Craig, Doug, thank you so much for joining us. Stay safe. We'll be right back after this.
I'm trying to beat the censors, and it looks like we found out a way temporarily. If you hit the subscribe button and then the bell, you'll get notice when I'm on television. So I want to hear from you, and I want you to be able to hear me. Free speech. Let's keep it as long as we can.